The great hall of the galactic buzzed. With fear and anger, hundreds of alien delegates from across the galaxy stood. In their special seats, their voices mixing into a loud roar of panic. The massive screens around the circular room showed the same terrible sight over and over again. A huge fleet of unknown ships was moving toward the outer worlds, destroying everything in their path. Admiral Keknesh of the Alterian Federation slammed his four-armed fist on his speaking platform. His blue skin had turned dark with worry. These invaders came from beyond our galaxy, he announced to the crowd. They have already wiped out 3-star systems. Our weapons barely scratch their ships. The room filled with frightened whispers and angry shouts. Many species had never seen such destruction before. The peaceful worlds of the Outer Rim were home to billions of beings who had no way to defend themselves. From the highest platform in the room, Grand Admiral Vexstar of the Zephyrian Empire stood up slowly. His tall, thin body cast a long shadow over the other delegates. The Zephyrians were known throughout the galaxy as the greatest warriors and builders of the most advanced warships. When Vexstar spoke, everyone listened. Fear will not save our worlds, Vexstar said, his voice carrying easily through the huge hall. The Zephyrian Empire offers to lead a combined fleet against these invaders. Our quantum shield technology and plasma cannons are the most advanced in the galaxy. Together with our allies, we can stop this threat. Many delegates nodded with relief. The Zephyrian ships were beautiful works of art with smooth curves and glowing energy fields that could slice through asteroids like butter. Their weapons could destroy entire moons, and their shields could turn away the most powerful attacks. The crystalline collective's representative, a being made of living glass, rang like a bell. When it spoke, the collective agrees to join this fleet. Our energy phase weapons will complement your plasma technology perfectly. One by one, the greatest military powers in the galaxy agreed to work together. The Mechanoid Union brought their self-repairing robot ships. The Void Walkers offered their ships that could appear and disappear in battles. The Plasma Lords promised their sun-powered weapons that could burn through anything. But in a small section of the hall, Ambassador Sarah Chen of Earth sat quietly. She was a middle-aged woman with gray hair and tired eyes. Most of the other delegates had forgotten that humans were even part of the Galactic Council. Earth was considered a backwater world with primitive technology. Admiral Vexstar noticed the human sitting alone. A cruel smile crossed his face. Ambassador Chen, he called out, his voice dripping with fake politeness. Surely Earth wants to contribute to this great effort. Perhaps you could offer some of your charming metal ships. Laughter rippled through the hall. Everyone knew about human ships. They were big, ugly blocks of metal that moved slowly through space. While other species had learned to use pure energy for everything, humans still used old-fashioned rockets and bullets. Their ships looked like they belonged in a museum, not in a real space battle. Sarah Chen stood up calmly. She was not tall or impressive like the other delegates, but something in her eyes made a few of the smarter aliens stop laughing. Earth will defend its territory, she said simply. Our fleet is already in position. This caused even more laughter. The Zephyrian admiral could barely control himself. Your fleet, those ancient relics that barely made it to your moon, my dear. Ambassador, this is serious warfare, not a parade of historical curiosities. A mechanoid unit clicked in word as it spoke. Human ships still use chemical explosions for power. Our databases show they have not updated their designs in centuries. It would be cruel to let them face these invaders. Sarah Chen did not show any anger at the insults. She had heard them all before. The human fleet will hold the SAW system, she repeated. We ask only that you give us time to evacuate our civilians if we fail. More laughter filled the hall. Grand Admiral Vextar shook his head. What looked like pity. Very well, Ambassador, we will rescue your survivors after we deal with the real fighting. Try not to get in our way. The meeting ended with grand speeches about galactic unity and advanced technology. The combined alien would meet at the edge of human space, then move out to face the invaders. It was the largest gathering of warships in galactic history, with thousands of vessels equipped with the most advanced weapons known to science. As the delegates filed out of the hall, many of them joked about the humans and their old ships. Some wondered if the human fleet would even show up to fight. Others bet on how quickly the human ships would be destroyed when they met real enemy fire. But Sarah Chen walked alone back to her small transport ship. She activated a secure communication channel to Earth. Council command, this is Ambassador Chen. The other species will arrive at Sol in 48 hours. Status of home fleet. The voice that answered was calm and professional. All ships are in position, Ambassador. The boys and girls are ready. Tell them the galaxy is watching. Sarah said. Time to remind everyone why humans don't build pretty ships. Far away in the Sol system, Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable. Through the thick armored windows she could see the rest of the human defense fleet spread out in formation. Each ship was exactly what the aliens had said. Massive block of metal and armor covered in weapon turrets and communication arrays. The Indomitable itself was over 60 years old. Its hull was scarred from a dozen different battles and covered with patches and repairs. The main guns were huge metal cylinders that looked primitive compared to the glowing energy weapons of other species. The engines were simple fusion drives that pushed the ship forward with bright flames instead of the elegant energy fields used by advanced aliens. Rodriguez was a veteran of the Mars colony wars and the asteroid mining conflicts. Her face was weathered and serious, marked by years of commanding ships in battle. She had served on the Indomitable for 20 years and she knew every bolt and wire on the old ship. Captain, her communications officer, called out, long-range sensors are picking up the alien fleet approaching from galactic north. Estimated arrival in 36 hours. Rodriguez nodded. Around her, the bridge crew worked at their stations. Unlike the clean, automated bridges of alien ships, the human bridge was full of manual controls, backup systems, and redundant equipment. Everything was built to work even if half the ship was destroyed. Signal the fleet, Rodriguez ordered. All ships to battle stations. Begin final preparations. Across the human formation, old warships that looked like they belonged in a scrapyard began to hum with hidden power. Crews that had trained for this moment there. Entire lives moved through familiar routines, weapons that seemed ancient were loaded with ammunition that could crack planets. The aliens were coming with their pretty ships and advanced technology. They thought they understood warfare because they had powerful weapons and strong shields, but they had never fought humans before. They were about to learn that sometimes the oldest ships carried the biggest surprises. The combined alien fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system like a glowing cloud of deadly beauty. Thousands of ships spread across space in perfect formation, their hulls shimmering with energy shields and their weapons glowing with contained power. Grand Admiral Vexter stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Cosmic Triumph. The ship was a masterpiece of Zypherian engineering, shaped like a graceful bird, with wings made of pure energy. Through the transparent aluminum windows, he could see his magnificent fleet arranged in attack formations that had been perfected over centuries of warfare. Report, Vexter commanded, his four eyes focusing on the tactical display. His weapons officer, a young Zypherian with bright silver skin, looked up from his console with excitement. Sir, our scanners have located the human defensive fleet. They're positioned in a loose formation around the fourth planet, Mars, according to our star charts. Show me, Vexter ordered. The main screen filled with an image that made several bridge officers laugh out loud. The human fleet looked exactly like the jokes they had heard at the Galactic Council. 67 ships hung in space like ancient metal boxes, their hulls dark and scarred compared to the elegant curves and glowing energy fields of the alien vessels. They looked like chunks of old metal that someone had forgotten to throw away. By the Seven Suns, breathed Captain Texley of the Crystalline Collective, his voice coming through the communication system. Are those actually warships? They look like cargo haulers from my great-grandfather's time. The mechanoid admiral's electronic voice crackled with amusement. My databases indicate those designs are at least 200 years old. The largest vessel appears to be using a basic fusion drive system. How quaint. Vexter studied the human formation with the eye of an experienced warrior. The ships were spread out randomly with no elegant battle patterns or coordinated energy fields. Their weapons appeared to be simple metal turrets that stuck out from the hull like old-fashioned cannons. Magnify the lead vessel, he ordered. The image zoomed in on the UES. Indomitable. And the laughter on the bridge grew louder. The ship was covered in patches and repairs like an old ground vehicle that had been fixed too many times. Its main guns were huge metal cylinders that pointed forward like the weapons of ancient warships from primitive worlds. Sir, the scanning officer reported, trying to control his laughter. Their communication system is using simple radio waves, not even quantum encryption. Should we establish contact? Oh yes, Vexter said with a cruel smile. Let us speak to these brave warriors. The communication went out on all frequencies, broadcasting in the common galactic language. Vexter's voice was smooth and mocking. Human vessels, this is Grand Admiral Vexter of the Zypherian Empire, commanding the combined galactic fleet. You are clearly outmatched and outgunned. Surrender now, and we will ensure your safe evacuation before we deal with the real threat to the galaxy. For a long moment there was silence. Then a simple radio transmission came back from the human flagship. The voice was calm and professional, with a slight accent that sounded strange to alien ears. Unknown fleet, this is Captain Elena Rodriguez of the United Earthship. Indomitable. Commanding the Sol Defense Force, your intentions in this system are unclear. State your business or withdraw. Immediately. The alien bridge officers looked at each other in amazement. Did these primitive humans really think they could give orders to the most powerful fleet in galactic history? Vexter leaned forward in his command chair. Captain Rodriguez, perhaps you do not understand the situation. We represent over 50 advanced civilizations. Our ships carry weapons that can destroy planets. Your ancient vessels pose no threat to us whatsoever. This is your final chance to surrender with dignity. Another pause, then Rodriguez's voice came back even calmer than before. Negative, the Sol Defense Force will not stand down. Human territory is protected by human ships and human crews. If you wish to pass through this system, you will need to go through us. The bridge erupted in laughter. A Plasma Lord Commander's fiery voice crackled over the communication system. Did they just challenge us to battle with those museum pieces, sir? The tactical officer reported, wiping tears of laughter from his eyes. Detailed scans show their armor is simple metal alloys. Their weapons appear to be kinetic projectile systems. They still use bullets and explosives. My readings indicate they're not even using proper energy shields. Vexeter stood up, his tall form casting shadows across the bridge. Through the viewing ports, he could see the human ships hanging in space like dark silent threats, but they were not threats at all. They were relics from a bygone age, manned by a species too stubborn to understand how outclassed they were. All ships prepare for battle, Vexeter announced to his fleet. Weapons to minimum power. We do not want to vaporize them completely. Perhaps we can disable their engines and take some prisoners for study. It will be interesting to see how these primitives have survived so long with such ancient technology. Across the alien fleet, thousands of weapon systems came online. Plasma cannons glowed white hot. Energy lances crackled with contained lightning, and quantum disruptors hummed with the power to tear apart atomic bonds. The combined firepower was enough to crack a moon or boil away an ocean. In contrast, the human ship sat silent and dark. No energy signatures, no glowing weapons, no sign of advanced technology at all. To the alien sensors, they looked dead in space, powered only by their primitive fusion reactors. Captain Rodriguez received the tactical report on her bridge with the same calm expression she had worn for 20 years of combat. They're powering weapons, her sensor operator reported. Energy readings are off the charts, Captain. Every ship in that fleet could destroy a city by itself. Acknowledged, Rodriguez replied. She looked around her bridge at the men and women who had served with her through the Mars conflicts and the asteroid wars. They were all veterans, all professionals, all ready to do their job. Signal the fleet, she ordered. All ships to condition red, weapons free. Prepare to engage. Throughout the human formation, old warships that had seemed dead suddenly came alive, but not in ways the aliens could understand. Instead of glowing energy fields, they showed heat signatures from dozens of hidden systems. Instead of exotic weapon displays, they simply turned their ugly metal turrets toward the enemy the aliens had made. Their first mistake, they thought they understood what they were looking at. They saw old ships with old weapons and assumed they were fighting an old enemy. They were about to discover that there is a difference between old and obsolete, between primitive and ineffective. The human fleet had been built for one purpose, refined through centuries of warfare, and crewed by people who had learned that in space combat, it did not matter how pretty your ship looked, it only mattered if your ship could kill the enemy and survive to fight again. All ships stand by for engagement, Rodriguez announced calmly. Remember, these aliens have never fought humans before. Let's show them what they missed in those fancy academies of theirs. The alien fleet began to move forward, confident in their technological superiority. Behind them, the real invaders from beyond the galaxy watched through their own sensors, curious to see how these two forces would fare against each other. The stage was set for a battle that would change how the galaxy thought about humanity forever. The first alien attack came like a storm of rainbow-colored death. Thousands of energy weapons fired at once, filling space with streams of plasma, quantum, lightning, and pure destructive force. The beams struck the human ships in brilliant flashes that could be seen from Mars itself. On the bridge of the Cosmic Triumph, Grand Admiral Vexstar watched with satisfaction as his fleet's opening salvo hammered the primitive human vessels. The energy readings from the impacts were enormous, enough to vaporize any normal ship several times over. Direct hits across their entire formation, his weapons officer reported with excitement. Sir, those ships should be nothing but vapor by now. But as the brilliant flashes faded, something impossible appeared on the tactical displays. The human ships were still there. Not only were they undamaged, but their energy signatures were actually growing stronger. What? Vexstar demanded, leaning forward in his command chair. Scan them again. Those readings cannot be correct. His scanning officer's hands danced over his controls, his silver skin turning pale with confusion. Sir, the readings are accurate, somehow. Their power output is increasing. It's as if our weapons are feeding energy into their systems instead of destroying them. Across the alien fleet, similar reports flooded the communication channels. Captains who had been laughing moments before now spoke with growing concern and confusion. Impossible, declared Captain Texali of the Crystalline Collective. Nothing can absorb that much plasma energy and survive. Their ships should be molten metal by now, but the human ships hung in space, dark and seemingly unchanged. Only the subtle energy readings told the true story of what had just happened. Deep within those ugly metal hulls, systems that the aliens had never imagined were quietly converting their energy attacks into power. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Rodriguez watched her power displays climb steadily upward. Energy absorption at 90% efficiency. Her engineering officer reported with a slight smile. All capacitor banks are charging. Nicely, Captain. Thank you, Commander Hayes, Rodriguez replied calmly. Around her, the bridge crew worked at their stations with the professional calm of people who had expected exactly this result. The Indomitable's hull looked like simple metal to alien scanners, but appearances were deceiving. hidden beneath layers of ablative armor, were metamaterial grids designed to channel energy attacks directly into the ship's power systems. What looked like primitive metal plating was actually a complex system that could absorb and redirect almost any form of energy. Weapon. This technology had been developed during the Mars colony wars when human ships had faced energy-based mining. Lasers turned into weapons. Instead of building stronger armor, human engineers had learned to make armor that could drink energy attacks and grow stronger from them. Admiral Vexstar stared at his displays in growing alarm. Fire again. Maximum power. All ships concentrate. Fire on the lead vessel. The second barrage was even more intense than the first. Every ship in the alien fleet poured energy into the human flagship. Enough power to crack a small moon. The space around the Indomitable turned white-hot with contained fury. And when the light faded, the old human ship was not only intact, it was moving. By the seven suns, breathed Vexstar as his sensors showed the impossible truth. The human ship was accelerating directly toward his fleet, its primitive fusion drive suddenly blazing with power that seemed impossible for such an old design. What the aliens did not understand was that human fusion drives were not primitive at all. They were variable output engines that could run on minimum power for years or push their reactors to dangerous limits when battle demanded it. While alien ships relied on steady, efficient energy sources, human ships were built like coiled springs ready to release enormous power when needed. Across the human formation, 67 ships that had seemed dead in space suddenly roared to life. Their engines flared like newborn stars as they surged forward, closing the distance to the alien fleet with startling speed. "This is impossible," Vexstar shouted. "Those ships should not be able to move that fast. Our intelligence said they were slow and clumsy." His tactical officer's voice was tight with fear. "Sir, they are accelerating at 12 standard gravities. At their current rate, they will be within our formation in 18 minutes. All ships evasive maneuvers," Vexstar ordered. "Do not let them close the distance." But the alien fleet, for all its advanced technology, had been designed for long-range energy combat. Their ships were fast and maneuverable, but they were not built for the kind of brutal close-quarters fighting that human ships were made for. The Zephyrian vessels were works of art, with graceful curves and delicate energy projectors. They were perfect for elegant battles between civilized species who fought with honor and style. But they had never faced an enemy that built ships like hammers and fought like cornered animals. Captain Rodriguez stood calmly on her bridge as the distance to the enemy fleet shrank rapidly. Through the armored viewing ports she could see the alien ships beginning to scatter their beautiful formations, breaking apart as panic set in. "Captain," her weapons officer reported, "we are approaching optimal firing range. All guns are loaded and ready. All ships." "This is Indomitable," Rodriguez announced over the fleet communication system. "Time to show these pretty boys what real warships look like. Weapons free. Engage at will." What happened next would be remembered in military academies across the galaxy for centuries. The human ships, ugly and scarred as they were, opened fire with weapons that the aliens had dismissed as primitive relics. But there was nothing primitive about a railgun that could accelerate a tungsten Rod to 15% of light speed. There was nothing obsolete about. Missiles that used quantum encrypted. Guidance systems immune to alien jamming. There was nothing ancient about nuclear. Warheads that could crack asteroids. Half the first human salvo tore through the alien formation like a hurricane. Through a flower garden. Railgun rounds moving at incredible speeds punch through energy shields as if they were not there, turning beautiful alien ships into expanding clouds of debris. Missiles that looked like simple chemical rockets suddenly revealed guidance systems more advanced than anything in the alien fleet. They twisted and turned through defensive fire, their artificial intelligence minds calculating paths to targets with inhuman precision, and behind the kinetic weapons came the nuclear fire, warheads that had been designed to destroy asteroid mining facilities, released their fury among the alien ships, turning the elegant vessels into brief bright stars. Shields are useless, screamed a mechanoid captain over the communication system. The projectiles are moving too fast, they punch right through our energy barriers. My ship is hit, reported a plasma lord commander. Hull breach on all decks, we are losing atmosphere. Fexter watched in horror as his beautiful fleet was torn apart by weapons he had thought were museum pieces. His tactical display showed ship after ship going dark as human fire found its mark with deadly precision. How, he whispered, staring at the approaching human vessels, how are they doing this? The answer was simple, but it was one that the advanced alien civilizations had forgotten in their pursuit of elegant technology. The humans had never stopped fighting each other, while other species had achieved peace and focused on making their weapons more sophisticated. Humans had spent centuries making their weapons more deadly. Every human ship was a veteran of multiple conflicts. Every weapon system had been tested in actual combat. Every design had been refined through the harsh teacher of battlefield experience. The aliens had built ships to impress other aliens. The humans had built ships to kill enemies and survive battles. There was a difference, and that difference was about to cost the alien fleet everything. As the human ships closed to point-blank range, their battered hulls scarred but intact, Admiral Vexstar finally understood the mistake his fleet had made. They had not been fighting primitives at all. They had been fighting specialists. The human fleet crashed into the alien formation like an avalanche of metal and fury at close range. The true nature of human warfare revealed itself in all its terrifying efficiency. Captain Elena Rodriguez stood on the bridge of the Indomitable as her ship's main guns rotated toward the alien flagship. The massive weapon systems, which had looked primitive and clumsy to alien eyes, now showed their true purpose. Each gun barrel was longer than most alien ships, designed to accelerate projectiles to speeds that could crack planets. Target the large Zephyrian vessel, Rodriguez ordered calmly. Main guns, fire for effect. The Indomitable shook as its primary weapons unleashed their fury. Twin streams of tungsten rods, each one accelerated to 15% of light speed, streaked across space toward Vexstar's flagship. The projectiles moved so fast that they appeared as brief lines of light against the darkness. Grand Admiral Vexstar had less than a second to register the incoming fire. Before it struck, The tungsten rods hit his ship's energy shields and passed through them as if they did not exist. The projectiles punched through the graceful hull of the cosmic triumph like bullets through paper, creating perfectly round holes that immediately began venting atmosphere and energy. Hull breaches on decks 4 through 12. His damage control officer shouted over the sound of alarms, "Sir, our shields cannot stop solid projectiles moving at those speeds." All around the alien fleet, the same scene was playing out. Ships that had been built to fight energy-based battles found themselves helpless against kinetic weapons that simply ignored their defenses, energy shields that could turn away the most powerful plasma beams were useless against chunks of metal moving at incredible velocities. The human ships moved through the alien formation like predators among prey. Their ugly, scarred hulls absorbed energy weapon hits and converted the power to their own systems, while their primitive-looking guns tore through alien defenses with contemptuous ease. UES Thermopylae, a heavy cruiser that had fought in the asteroid wars, engaged 3 mechanoid vessels at once. The robot ships tried to surround the human vessel, their sleek forms dancing through space as they poured energy fire into the old cruiser's hull. But the Thermopylae had been built for exactly this kind of fight. Its captain, Commander Sarah Park, had learned her trade in the brutal close quarters battles of the mining conflicts. She knew that in real combat there was no substitute for thick armor, powerful guns, and the will to use them. "Rotate ship, bring all guns to bear," Park ordered. "Show these machines how humans fight." The Thermopylae spun on its axis, bringing dozens of weapon turrets into firing position. What the aliens had mistaken for simple chemical guns were actually a mix of rail guns, missile launchers, and point defense systems that had been refined through decades of human versus human warfare. The broadside that erupted from the human cruiser was like nothing the mechanoid vessels had ever faced. Railgun rounds shredded the robotic hulls while guided missiles curved around their defensive fire to strike from unexpected angles. Nuclear-tipped torpedoes detonated among their formation, turning the elegant robot ships into glowing clouds of vaporized metal. "Impossible," transmitted the surviving mechanoid. "Commander, our armor is composed of self-repairing smart materials. These weapons should not be able to damage us," but human weapons had been designed to fight human armor, which was often just as advanced as anything the aliens possessed. Nuclear-tipped penetrator rounds did not care about self-repairing materials when they could vaporize entire sections of hull in microseconds. Across the battlefield, similar scenes played out as human ships demonstrated the brutal effectiveness of their combat systems. The UES Marathon engaged a squadron of crystalline collective vessels, its missile batteries filling space with hundreds of guided warheads that twisted and turned through defensive fire like living things. The crystalline ships, beautiful constructs of living glass and energy, tried to use their phase shift technology to avoid the incoming missiles, but human guidance systems had been designed to track targets that could jump between dimensions, a technology developed during conflicts with rebel colonies that had access to experimental jump drives. The missiles followed their targets through multiple phase shifts, their quantum-encrypted brains calculating intercept courses that seemed impossible when they finally struck. The crystalline hulls shattered like windows hit by hammers, sending rain fragments spinning through space. Captain Rodriguez watched the battle unfold around her flagship with the calm professionalism of someone who had seen it all before. To the aliens, this was a shocking display of primitive brutality. To her, it was Tuesday. "Captain," her communications officer reported, "Admiral Vextar is trying to contact us." "Put him through," Rodriguez replied, never taking her eyes off the tactical display where alien ships were dying by the dozens. Vextar's image appeared on the main screen, and Rodriguez could see the fear and confusion in his alien features. Behind him, his bridge was filled with smoke and the sound of damage control teams working frantically. "Captain Rodriguez," Vextar said, his voice strained with desperation, "this slaughter must stop. We came here to help defend the galaxy against invaders. We are not your enemies." Rodriguez looked at him with the same expression she might use to examine an insect. "You entered human space with weapons charged and made demands for our surrender. In my experience, Admiral, that makes you an enemy. But we are advanced civilizations." Vextar protested. "We have laws of warfare, codes of honor. This is butchery. This is warfare," Rodriguez replied simply. "Your people have spent centuries making your ships prettier and your weapons more elegant. My people have spent centuries making our ships tougher and our weapons more lethal. The difference is showing." Around the indomitable, the human fleet continued its methodical destruction of the alien formation, ships that had taken decades to build and represented the pinnacle of their species. Technology were being reduced to scrap metal in minutes. The UES Gettysburg cornered a void Walker ship that was trying to escape by phasing into subspace. The human vessel's weapons officer had dealt with similar tricks during the rebellion of the outer colonies, and he knew exactly how to handle enemies that could disappear from normal space. "Tachyon pulse full spread," he ordered. The Gettysburg fired a barrage of exotic particles that disrupted the subspace continuum itself, forcing the void Walker ship back into normal space directly in front of the human vessel's main guns. The resulting explosion lit up half the solar system. Meanwhile, the UES Valley Forge engaged in a knife fight with a plasma lord dreadnought. The two ships so close that their hulls almost touched. The alien ship poured solar fire into the human vessels armor, turning sections of hull white hot with contained star fury. But the Valley Forge had been designed for exactly this kind of punishment. Its armor was not just metal. It was layers of reactive materials, heat sinks, and emergency systems that could function even when most of the ship was on fire. The human crew continued to fight even as their bridge filled with smoke and their hull glowed with heat. The alien ship, for all its power, had never been built to take damage. When the Valley Forge's point-blank railgun fire finally penetrated the Plasma Lord's elegant hull, the alien vessel came apart like a flower in a blast furnace. Admiral Vextar watched his proud fleet being systematically destroyed by weapons and tactics he had never imagined. These humans fought without honor, without elegance, without any consideration for the accepted rules of civilized warfare. They fought to win, All ships retreat. Vexter finally ordered, his voice breaking with the shame of defeat. All vessels withdraw immediately. We cannot win this battle. But Captain Rodriguez was not finished with her lesson. Negative, Admiral, she said over the open channel. You came here to judge human capabilities. The demonstration is not yet complete. The human fleet began to move again, pursuing the fleeing alien ships with the relentless determination of hunting wolves. They had been dismissed as primitives, laughed at as relics, ignored as irrelevant. Now it was time to make sure the galaxy never made that mistake again. The battle that had begun with alien laughter ended with alien screams. Across the solar system, the wreckage of what had once been the most advanced fleet in galactic history drifted in, slowly expanding clouds of debris. Grand Admiral Vexter's flagship limped through space, its elegant hull cracked, and bleeding atmosphere from dozens of wounds. Half his bridge crew was dead or injured, and the beautiful energy fields that had once surrounded his ship flickered weakly like dying candles. Casualty report, Vexter demanded, though he already knew the answer would be terrible. His surviving tactical officer, her silver skin burned black from electrical fires, looked up from her damaged console. Sir, we have lost 68% of the fleet. Most of the survivors are heavily damaged and barely able to maintain life support. 68%, nearly 7,000 ships, representing 50 different civilizations and centuries of technological advancement had been destroyed or disabled by 67 human vessels that looked like they belonged in a museum. How many human ships have we destroyed? Vexter asked from the dreaded the answer. None, sir, came the whispered reply. Several human vessels show battle damage, but all remain operational. Their casualty reports indicate minimal crew losses. Vexter stared at the tactical display in disbelief. The human ships hung in space around his fleeing survivors like dark wolves surrounding a wounded herd. Their hulls were scorched and scarred from the battle, but not one had been destroyed, not one had even been disabled. The communication board crackled to life with the voice of Captain Rodriguez. Her tone was as calm and professional as it had been at the beginning of the battle, as if the complete destruction of a galactic fleet was simply another day's work. Admiral Vexter, this is Captain Rodriguez. You are ordered to withdraw from human space immediately. Any vessel that attempts to return will be destroyed without warning. Wait. Vexter called out desperately. Captain, please, we must speak. Real threat to the galaxy is still out there. The invaders from beyond borders, they are the ones we came to fight. There was a pause, then Rodriguez's voice returned with a slight note of interest. Explain. There is a fleet of unknown ships moving through the outer rim territories, Vexter said quickly, afraid that the humans might start shooting again at any moment. They have already destroyed 3-star systems. Our combined fleet was formed to stop them before they reached the core worlds. Another pause. When Rodriguez spoke again, her voice carried a hint of something that might have been amusement. And you thought the best strategy was to demand the surrender of the only species in the galaxy that still knows how to fight a real war. The truth of that statement hit Vexter like a physical blow. In their arrogance, they had tried to push aside the one military force that might actually be able to help them. Worse, they had revealed their own weakness and incompetence in the most humiliating way possible. "Captain," Vexstar said, his pride finally cracking. "Completely. We need your help. Our weapons and tactics are useless against enemies who do not follow the accepted rules of civilized warfare. But your people, you fight like they do, like killers. We fight like survivors," Rodriguez corrected him. "There's a difference. We don't kill because we enjoy it, Admiral. We kill because we're very, very good at it, and because sometimes that's what the situation requires." Through his damaged viewports, Vexstar could see the human ships slowly moving back to their defensive positions. Even now, after demonstrating their overwhelming superiority, they maintained their formations and kept their weapons ready. These were not conquerors or glory seekers. These were professionals doing a job. "What do you know about these invaders?" Rodriguez asked. Vexstar quickly transmitted what little data his fleet had managed to gather. Ships of unknown design using weapons that ignored conventional defenses, showing no interest in communication or diplomacy. They simply appeared, destroyed everything in a system, and moved on to the next target. "Sounds familiar," Rodriguez said after reviewing the data. "Mass extinction events, total destruction of infrastructure, no apparent interest in conquest or negotiation." Captain Martinez's analysis, another human voice, joined the communication. Calm and analytical. "Classic extermination pattern, Captain. Similar to the Titan corporations. Scorched earth tactics during the Jupiter conflicts. But on a much larger scale. These invaders aren't trying to conquer territory. They're trying to eliminate all life in the galaxy." Vexstar felt his heart skip a beat. The human officers were discussing galactic extinction as if it were a tactical problem to be solved, not the end of civilization itself. "Recommendations?" Rodriguez asked. "Standard anti-extinction protocol," Martinez replied. "Find them, fix them, and finish them, though we'll need to coordinate with local forces to be effective at this scale." "Local forces," Rodriguez's voice carried a note of dry humor. "You mean these gentlemen who just demonstrated that they couldn't fight their way out of a paper bag?" There was laughter on the human communication channel. Actual laughter, as if the complete defeat of the galactic fleet was amusing rather than terrifying. "Captain Rodriguez," Vexstar interrupted desperately. "Will you help us?" "That depends, Admiral. Are you willing to follow human tactical doctrine? Because I can tell you right now that our way of fighting is nothing like what you're used to. We don't worry about honor or elegance or minimizing collateral damage when we fight an extinction-level threat. We fight to win, and we use every weapon available." Vexstar thought about his beautiful ships reduced to scrap metal in less than an hour. He thought about the elegant tactics and honorable combat traditions that had proven utterly worthless against an enemy that simply ignored them. "Yes," he said finally, "we will follow your lead." "Good. Signal your surviving ships to form up behind the human fleet. We're going hunting." As word of the battle spread across the galaxy, the impact was immediate and profound. The species that had mocked humanity's primitive technology fell silent as the reports came in. The combined fleet of the most advanced civilizations in known space had been destroyed by weapons that still used bullets and explosives. On 100 different worlds, military analysts studied the battle recordings with growing amazement and horror. The humans had not just won, they had won so completely that it redefined what galactic warfare looked like. Ambassador Sarah Chen received the reports in her quarters aboard the transport ship carrying her back to Earth. She read through the casualty lists and damage assessments with the same calm expression she had worn at the Galactic Council. Her aide, a young diplomat named Jackson, looked up from his data pad with wide eyes. Ambassador, the galactic media is calling it the most one-sided military defeat recorded history. Some of them are saying that humanity represents a threat to galactic peace. Sarah Chen smiled for the first time in weeks. Let them think what they want, Jackson. The important thing is that they're finally taking us seriously. Meanwhile, in the depths of space beyond the galaxy's edge, the real invaders watch the battle through their own sensor, their artificial intelligence systems analyze the human tactics and weapons with cold, calculating precision. For the first time since beginning their campaign of extermination, they encountered something unexpected. Species that fought the way they did. Species that built weapons for killing rather than showing off. A species that treated warfare as a profession rather than an art form. The invaders began to recalculate their plans. The galaxy's defenders were not as weak as they had assumed. At least some of them knew how to fight a real war. Back in the Sol system, Captain Rodriguez stood on her bridge and watched the alien survivors form up behind her fleet. They flew in ragged formations, their beautiful ships scarred and broken, their crews humbled by defeat. But they were still alive, and they were still willing to fight. That was something she could work with. All ships, this is Rodriguez, she announced to the combined human and alien fleet. Set course for the outer rim territories. Time to show these invaders what happens when they threaten our galaxy. The human ships turned toward deep space, their ugly hulls scarred but intact, their crews ready for whatever came next. Behind them followed the remnants of the galactic fleet, no longer laughing at the relics from Sol. They had learned the hard way that sometimes the oldest ships carried the biggest guns, and the most primitive species knew the most about war. The galaxy would never underestimate humanity again.